So welcome all to an information session on university signage and wayfinding, intended to bring attention and clarity to processes and systems in place within institutional planning and operations. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded, and it is intended to be a resource for those who are unable to attend today's session and for review by future hires within IP&O. My name is Dave Schultz, and along with John Shulak and Henry Velez, I'd like to talk about simplifying what is often perceived as a confusing subject. To provide context, I'd like to give a little bit of pertinent history. As you all know, massive change has been occurring at Rutgers University ever since Governor Chris Christie signed legislation to restructure higher education in New Jersey in August of 2012. What does that have to do with signage, you may ask? Well, I'll tell you. At the same time as restructure planning, Rutgers took an overhaul of its visual identity system. Understanding that a standard and effective visual identity strengthens Rutgers, the Rutgers visual identity system defined the standards for using Rutgers logos and other identity elements. Logos, letterheads, business cards, swag, websites, banners, things like this are all covered by the board-mandated and board-approved identity system. The system and its associated policy live under the Vice President for University Communications and Marketing. Visit the UCM website if you are interested in the details. Signage is a big part of the Rutgers visual identity system. You cannot walk 10 feet in a Rutgers building without encountering some sort of sign. Outside, wayfinding and building signs are all over our campuses. Poorly managed, signage turns into unorganized, confusing visual clutter. Well-managed, signs can inform and guide. The university adopted a signage standard, and on July 1st, 2013, the day of integration of most of UMDNJ into Rutgers, there was a massive effort to amend signage all around the campuses. The board-approved university wayfinding and signage standards lives in my area, planning, development, and design. Fast forward a few years, and IP&O is in its infancy. Units previously under administration and public safety were merged with departments within university facilities and capital planning, and mixed in there were some legacy UMDNJ functions. As a result, there were 3 sign shops, each doing what it always did in the manner that it was always done. In order to improve services offered by IP&O, the systems were simplified and streamlined, and now there is a single sign shop. Given that planning and design of signage is completely intertwined with fabrication and installation, planning, development, and design's Laura Berman and team work closely with business services Dave Haynes and team to offer a coordinated, well-organized business line that touches every one of the university's 950 plus owned buildings. Laura and Dave will get into the details of this in a moment. We invite you to this information session that will provide guidance regarding requirements, resources, and workflow for everything signage, from design to installation, and everything in between. From a name insert on a door to a name on a new building, from the standard to the special, we will cover all that today. Before I turn it over to Laura and Dave, John, Henry, anything else to add?
Yeah, just briefly, and thank you, Dave. As Dave was suggesting, we have one of everything that was ever made at Rutgers, and in every place. And it's our hope that putting this guidance and this material in place will help everybody's effort for the myriad of requests that we get. And it's not easy on us, right? Because from all corners of the university, we're being asked to provide signage or projects, and it's our hopes that this will help simplify the understanding of the process.
And Dave, I just want to follow up. I mean, thanks for that summary. Well done. I agree with everything Dave said, and John, just like to add, right, that the standardization piece, as Dave has mentioned, is very important here. But over the last couple of years, I've been seeing some of the work coming out at the signage shop as well. And I can tell you, there's also an opportunity here by following these guides and making sure we stick to this process. There's opportunities to save not just in time, but save dollars as well, right? So we've seen over the last couple of years instances where we haven't followed the process. We use an outside vendor, and the product that comes back sometime is not accurate. And then two, it's at a higher price than we could have done it in-house. So those are important things to keep in mind as well.
Laura, next slide. All right, before I turn this over to Laura and Dave, a couple basics. What is signage? What's wayfinding? What is environmental graphics? So we offer those definitions. I'm not going to read them word for word. What are we not talking about today? Equally important is what we are talking about. So we are not talking about letterhead, logos, specialty imagery. You know, you go to an athletics building and the mega graphics are all over the place, right? We can coordinate that, right? But that's really not what we're talking about today. I would also like to highlight how coordinated this journey has been. John and Henry and I started talking about this pre-COVID. Lots of work done. The signage and environmental graphics and our standards have been coordinated with university communications and marketing, with requirements of the New Jersey Uniform Construction Code and Fire Code, with Americans with Disabilities Act, with the Rutgers University Foundation for donor signage, and everything we show you, everything in our standards comports with the board approved requirements. When buildings are named or major donations are involved, we coordinate the process with the University Naming Committee and the Board of Governors. Be advised, however, that this university-wide standard does not come with funding. There is no central pot of money that pays for signs. The cost of signage must be borne by the requester or by the project if signage is needed as part of a renovation, addition, or new construction. There are resources available to all of you in addition to this presentation. Resources are available online, but the most valuable resources for signage and wayfinding are our informed business services and PD&D staff. Please reach out with questions, and if a complex renovation or large capital project is in the works, then talk to us early. I cannot stress strongly enough that signage and wayfinding are not last-minute considerations. Finally, like any standard at Rutgers, it is subject to updates and changes. We will keep this information current on the web, and conversations with and reviews by PD&D and the Business Services Graphics Unit will help you not be caught off guard. Thanks for your time and attention today, and Laura, take it away, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Berman from Planning, Development, and Design. Deb Rabinski and Michael Randall from the PD&D team ensure that signage, wayfinding, and donor recognition at the university conforms with the University Wayfinding and Signage Manual and donor recognition guidelines. So Dave talked about the history and the importance of that. This presentation today will be a takeaway as well, as in addition to it being recorded. So we hope this is a resource for you all to utilize. The links are here and they are on the website because these documents do change and do get updated. So please reference the links on the website that will give you the most up-to-date information. PD&D also offers design services related to custom signage and reviews custom projects and environmental graphics and design. Dave? You there, Dave Haynes?
Sorry, everybody, having a little technical difficulty. Dave Haynes, Business Services. From the business services side of the house, we have Gary Ambrosi and John Walsh, who are our boots on the ground when it comes to signage. They are pretty much available at any given notice. A big part of what they do is procure, fabricate, and/or install wayfind signage. I've put two contacts on this particular slide here, but you'll find some additional contacts in the slides as we move forward.
And then the requester and project oversight. So this role really varies from project to project. This might be someone in operations, a project manager, planner, estimator. It could be the client representative or even the end user requesting signage. So regardless of the title of the individual, that individual's role related to signage and wayfinding is to coordinate closely with PD&D and the graphics unit. We're going to go, Dave Haynes and I are going to go over 4 different workflow processes in this presentation. As we describe these workflows, I would ask you to think about the signage requests that you make and manage. And if you have questions about which process to use, please reach out to me or Dave Haynes, or feel free to ask a question in the chat if maybe Dave or someone can keep an eye on the chat. Or at the end, we'll have a question slide at the end. We can take questions at the end as well. And please note that there's going to be images on the right hand of each of the upcoming slides. And these are really here to give you a graphic representation of the types of signage we're talking about. So the first of the 4 workflows that will be discussed is the commodity signage. This is your standard signage requests that can be found in the wayfinding and signage manual. These requests come directly from the end users or on smaller signage projects, typically in renovations. Dave Haynes will also speak about the parking signage related to parking identification, reserve spaces, parking wayfinding, and special events. Typically, parking requests come directly from Department of Transportation Services or are related to transportation services scope on projects. I will be speaking about projects that encompass contract service renovations, capital projects, standalone signage projects, larger scale projects that involve signage and wayfinding. And this is when scope for signage and wayfinding is included in construction documents or in a signage package developed by a third-party consultant or vendor. And lastly, I'll be talking about the workflow for custom projects related to donor recognition, plaques and markers, and custom environmental graphics. All right.
So commodity signage. So the easiest way to get a hold of is a customer who typically makes contact with the business services graphics unit for a request of commodity signage. Process is applicable to renovation projects signed consistent of no more than, say, 50 signs. Customers have a couple of options to reach us. A work order can be entered into the service call center, and there's a link you can see within this document, or they can contact us direct. A representative from the business services graphics unit will make contact within 24 hours of receiving your request. After gathering all of the information, a quote with description gathered from the above conversation is provided back to the customer. Based on what the request is, a mock-up draft is provided to the customer for review approval. Obviously, this is kind of important here. There's a lot of dialogue going back and forth. So between the design guide and what you're looking for, we kind of put it all together so you have a good visual representation. So there's no surprises at the end of it. And then finally, with the above quote, the customers provided all of the necessary financial information to begin the process of sending the business services graphics unit an internal purchase order or funding source. Work does not start until the funding component has been completed. Once product is completed, it is either delivered, picked up, or installed. So following along kind of the same route, one of the things that we discovered as we were going through this process was there were typically like your top 30 signs that were missing on either like a TCO need or a building opening. So working with some of our partners in the university, we identified some top issues found via signage when opening a building and or applying for a TCO. We've created some graphics and now carry them in stock. You can find these in our marketplace within a link, and you can see the link below. So here we have a couple of graphics below of some of the signs that are available. Kind of simple signs, but it's just one of those things when you're getting very close to the end that sometimes are forgot about. But rather than kind of scrambling around or trying to source them, we actually put them in marketplace now so you guys can log in, get them and adhere them, whatever it is, install them. We can help you with that. And then you can close things out and move on to opening the project.
Dave, before you leave this, I got a chat from Alex Ruiz, who points out that standard safety signs in labs has to comply with CDC, OSHA, and ANSI regulations, specifically to color, size, text, verbiage, et cetera. So this is where, standard signs in stock, as opposed to people making their own, would be very helpful. So Alex,
yeah, absolutely. And what I can tell you is every one of these signs that was created was vetted specifically by those folks, including fire safety, in the size of the font, the color, the texture, whether it had to be reflective. So all of those triggers have already been met, so we don't need to reinvent the wheel. And then one other one that's of particular interest we get contacted on a lot is parking signs. It's a hot topic throughout all of our campuses. I think it should be known that all parking signs that we receive here go to DOTS. Division of Transportation Services receives them. I wait for approval from them. It should be noted that if I do receive them, again, it gets sent over to DOTS for either follow-up with the customer or reviewed directly for approval. Creating any parking signs does not take place until DOTS has approved. I have to emphasize that because on a daily basis, we probably get about 10 parking signs of, hey, I want my name on something. So it's important to understand that there is like dual triggers on this particular one. Once approval is received from DOTS, work then begins on the signage request. However, not until it's understood whose sign is it. So what does that mean? DOTS makes the determination on whether it's a standard parking sign or if it's a customer-driven sign that DOTS is only approving the use of. And then again, based on the above response, a quote process begins either direct with the customer or the business services graphics units work directly with DOTS to satisfy said request.
So again, just want to overview on the types of projects we're speaking about when I talk about project workflow. So this encompasses capital projects, large scale renovations, additions, standalone signage projects, where the signage and wayfinding scope that's included is issued in construction documents or in a signage package developed by a third-party consultant or vendor. The project oversight it's important that the person in charge of the project engages PD&D very early on in the project. Sometimes the project scope will focus on the building or the project itself. And it's important that we look at this in a larger context to determine if there's additional wayfinding needed for the campus context to tie this new project so people are able to locate it. This has come up on some recent projects, and especially student-facing spaces, where we want to ensure that while most people are probably using their phone to locate areas, that there is wayfinding where needed on campus. So the oversight, project oversight submits CD's packages to PD&D for review. We're reviewing for conformance with standards. We will coordinate with business services graphics unit during the review process. If there is elements that review coordination with university marketing communications, that will also occur. We strive to keep this process into the 10-day review period to align with our plan review team, but this will vary contingent on the number of resubmissions that have to be returned to address comments. Then a project is bid out with the GC or CM, and it goes out to a vendor during that process. I want to highlight the importance that during the construction process, that when shop drawings are issued or when change orders occur related to signage and wayfinding, that PD&D is re-engaged in that review process. We want to ensure that conformance as the project design changes, that it's consistent throughout until final closeout. Other areas that will often occur during projects. So temporary signage can often be required. I wanted to mention that the business services graphics unit is a good resource for this. If you do need temporary signage, the shop has incredible capabilities to create temporary signage that looks near to the actual permanent sign. I know often the GC scope will cover this, or they'll provide the temporary signage for your projects, but please be aware that the service does exist in-house, and we can help ensure that the temporary signage conforms with the standards and the permanent signage. Donor recognition is another component that we will assist in coordinating on larger projects. Dave Schultz talked about this at the beginning, but I just want to remind everyone that a building being named after a person or persons must be approved by the University Naming Committee and Board of Governors. Sometimes donor recognition or new donors come in through the foundation or through the project while the project is in design and construction. And we are pleased asking you to engage PD&D in the review of that, because PD&D works closely with the University Foundation to ensure that donor recognition is consistent across the university. And lastly, design services that are offered for environmental graphics and design. So this is elements that help people experience what the graphics within the space and helps them connect themselves to the space that they're in. So is this elements of color and texture and visual elements that are part of the architectural design. Sometimes this is included in the architect services, but if it is not, it is a service that PD&D can assist with. This could be vinyl, images on glass, or wall coverings as some examples. When requests come in related to more branding components, we ensure that this is closely coordinated with our communications group and university communications and marketing. And lastly, I'll go through the workflow for custom projects. So these projects come in through the PRF system. Project request form, a project number is assigned, and PD&D offers design services for these custom projects, or we will hire a vendor or consultant to assist in the design of these projects. Please note that being that these are custom, these aren't our standard products that we're typically seeing. Design and fabrication, especially for cast bronze plaques or cast materials, can have a much longer lead time. So please take that into consideration in your design schedules. Once the design of custom projects are approved, we hand the process over and coordinate with Dave Haynes's group in the business service graphics unit for the procurement process, obtaining quotes, receiving funding, and issuing purchase orders. And then Dave Haynes and his team coordinate the fabrication, installation, and PD&D is involved in the final closeout to ensure that what was agreed to at the beginning of the project is what's delivered and installed. So we've covered a lot of material. I know, Dave, if you want to open it to questions now, or if you want to say anything before questions.
To take any questions. Nothing in the chat. Raise your hand. Just come off mute. Chat. All right, we'll say going once, going twice. So there's no questions at the moment. Glad to take any as they come up in the next day or so, as you might think about it. So Laura and Dave are the prime contacts. I'd like to really thank both of them. This streamlined process was much needed. Will simplify signage efforts for any requester. And it could not have landed in this good place without the significant efforts of not only Laura and Dave, but with dedicated efforts by Deb Rubinski, Mike Randall of PD&D, and Gary Ambrosi and John Walsh of the graphics unit. Henry, John, and I appreciate the hard work of these folks. Hope this makes it easier for you, for your project managers, for your staff, and we will make these resources available, including this cleaned up video. And glad to provide this clarity, and thank you for your time today. Take care all.
Thank you.